Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel today. Now don't mind my voice, I'm a little under the weather. I think the kids got me sick. It is what it is, all about parenting, right? In today's video, I just wanted to talk to you about Starfield and why I believe it did fail, and why I believe Todd Howard and Bethesda still doesn't understand what the actual gamer wants. So Starfield came out to kind of a mixed review here. It came out in 2023. It's been out for 2 years. I have only recently played this in the past 6 months or so. Now, I did put a good amount of hours into the game. And I have to be honest, this is the only Bethesda game that I could not actually finish the main storyline. I just got so bored of it. I found the writing to be very dry. However, still somewhat of a commercial success, but not as successful as Bethesda games usually are. So let's have a quick peek at this and then we'll break it all down.
We're all here because we're committed to the biggest question of all. What's out there? You're part of Constellation now. Part of our family.
Alright guys, so we're going to go over some what I would call nitpicky stuff. Things I expect from Bethesda games that weren't in this game and why I felt it was a letdown. The first big thing for me was the planets themselves. You could tell they were procedurally generated. There was a lot of emptiness and not really any meaning to them. Now, I understand, yeah, it's outer space. A lot of the planets don't have anything on them, yada, yada, yada. However, when I compare this game to something like a Mass Effect or something where, you know, the planets, a lot of them you couldn't really do anything on them, you just scan them with your ship. But mostly when you did land on the planets, they had a purpose. There was kind of part of the story to it or something, or there was some interesting stuff. Now, when you land on a Starfield planet, you'll see very little in the way of interest. And what I mean by that is you might find a couple space stations that are really small, or some sort of abandoned mining operation, a couple spots where you can go get some special minerals or something. I found it really boring, and it's kind of like these were just afterthoughts. They wanted to make it so you could land on the planets, but there's not enough resources to, you know, fill the planets out and flesh them out. And for me, it just made a very boring game loop for the people that do like to explore, you know, in a game like Skyrim or Oblivion or Morrowind, you know, the Fallout series where you're just walking around and you're picking up junk. And I even found on the planets, when you did find these abandoned places or the places filled with mercenaries, there wasn't a lot of looting to be done that was worthwhile, really. That could just be my opinion. Maybe my expectations were too high for this game, and I set myself up to be disappointed. Now, Bruce Nesmith, he is a lead designer at Bethesda. He did do an article for GameSpot, and it reads, "I think it's a good game," Nesmith said. "I don't think it's the same caliber as the other two, you know, Fallout, Skyrim, or Elder Scrolls rather, but I think it's a good game." Nesmith added that he remains proud of the work he and his former colleagues contributed to the game. In fact, if another studio had released Starfield, it would have been received differently, Nesmith argued. The designer said that Starfield failed to meet expectations set by being a space game from the makers of Skyrim and Fallout. Possibly contributing to a comparatively muted response to Starfield was the game's procedural generation, Nesmith theorized. "I'm an enormous space fan. I'm an amateur astronomer. I'm up on all of that stuff. A lot of the work I did on Starfield was on the astronomical data," Nesmith said. "But space is inherently boring. It's literally described as nothingness. So moving throughout that isn't where the excitement is, in my opinion." To Nesmith, procedural generation made the planets feel very samey and less exciting, which is where it falls apart. Nesmith also lamented the lack of enemy variety, saying that regular humans were the only serious enemies despite the presence of cool alien creatures. There's weight to Nesmith's comments given his resume. The designer was at Bethesda since 2000 before his departure, and after significant contributions to the Elder Scrolls Oblivion, Fallout 3, he served as the lead designer for the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. these days he's working on the fantasy literary RPG series Glory Seeker. Okay guys, so this does come back to how I described my experience, where you go to the planets, they're all kind of the same. There's not a lot going on. There's not really anything of interest in them, and there's no real incentive to go to these planets. Now, one thing I did find with this game, which was really strange, is Bruce says that everything is boring in space. It's literally nothing. I can't understand some of Bruce's points here. My thing is, you know, if you're doing an outer space game, you basically have an unlimited opportunity here to create any sort of being you want, any sort of alien race you want. If you went and played like a Dead Space, for instance, the aliens were creepy and scary. Or if you went to Mass Effect, it was more like Star Wars, where the aliens were kind of humanoid, a lot of them. There was some that weren't, obviously, too. There's so many games and opportunities here where you could have made that interesting, especially on the planets. Like, you drop into these planets and the only alien life forms you see are basically like little animals or something. They're not scary, no sense of urgency. There was very limited amounts of creativity put into this, and I really don't understand why. Like, Bethesda does have a good amount of resources. They're a big studio. They really could have fleshed some of these planets out. Now, I'm not saying they had to do this with all the planets, guys. Obviously, you're going to have some planets with just, you know, rocks and stuff on them to mine, and that's totally fine, but maybe make it so you can scan it like in Mass Effect and do it with your ship or something like that, and then flesh out some more of these bigger planets. And just another side note on the planets, I found it really strange that, yeah, there was a few interesting cities and stuff on some of these planets, but there was never more than one city on any planet. Like, think about that. So I think they just got too ambitious with this, and then as they started making it, they were probably like, yeah, this is gonna be tough to make this a full fleshed out world like a Skyrim or a Fallout 4 with the resources we have. It would probably take them forever. I don't know, guys. To me, it really was an immersion killer playing this game. You know, the next part of this is people do have a certain expectation of a Bethesda game. We'll have a look at this PC Gamer article that Todd Howard was in, and it reads, Starfield came out 7 months ago and many of us are yet to heal from the discourse. Bethesda's dream game was a polarizing thing, earning plaudits from some quarters and more ambivalent response from others, including us. But 7 months is a lot of time for reflection, and Bethesda boss Todd Howard reckons he knows why the spacey RPG was so divisive. It just wasn't traditionally Bethesda enough for some people. Chatting with Kinda Funny, Howard said that many people have a very specific set of expectations when it comes to Bethesda games. We see a lot of players saying, this is what I want out of a Bethesda game, which is to explore a world in a certain way, and Starfield didn't give me that. I prefer the way it's done in Fallout and Elder Scrolls. And although Howard thinks that's perfectly understandable, he says, it's just not the experience Starfield sets out to provide. I do think for us, particularly me, going into a science fiction game, I want to be able to land on all the planets. I want the game to say yes to us, knowing that the content is going to be different than you've seen from us in the past. Okay, guys, here again. This is one of those situations where I believe Starfield was a pet project from Todd and a bunch of the developers at the studio. And maybe I'm looking at this from a fan and a business standpoint. These other two IPs, huge in the gaming industry. Everyone loves them. They're very beloved. They can last over a decade easily with mod support and DLC, as you see. And you're just basically shitting on them. I don't understand the thought process of, hey, we could have had Elder Scrolls out, you know, probably now. We made Starfield instead, and we used the, you know, engine upgrades as the excuse for this. I just don't buy it, guys. Now, what Todd does get right in this article is, yes, the game does not feel like a Bethesda game. And to me, I like the fact that when I pop in a Bethesda game, you know, wherever you start on the map, you can open up the map, look somewhere way far away, and just walk there. And it's seamless. And you don't have loading screens. You don't have all this forced fast travel to go to locales. You know, if I want to walk and just listen to the awesome soundtrack of Oblivion or Skyrim and just enjoy the scenery and, you know, pick flowers and maybe loot along the way, I can do that. This game, no. You get in your ship, you're forced to fly somewhere. And a lot of times you can't take a direct route. You got to go to different star systems. And To me, this is a huge waste of time and why I got so bored with this. You know, Mass Effect did this masterfully back in the old days. When you were traveling, you could do some interesting stuff. You could scan the planets, you know, there was cutscenes, you could talk to your companions on the ship. There's always something interesting to fiddle with on Mass Effect. And this just does not have good storytelling. You don't care about the companions. Their side stories are not good. I really didn't find any of them interesting. And I did find them all very lifeless, like all of the NPCs in this game. Now, you can go to the cities. There's some interesting characters, but for the most part, the NPCs feel very lifeless. And I don't understand, with all the new tech, why they couldn't do this a little bit better. You know, if you go play Oblivion and Skyrim, you know, yeah, some of them have limited voices. There's not, you know, thousands of voice actors. Some of them have the same voices. Like Oblivion, it was always a big laughing point. But I don't know what it was about it. But if you talk to the NPCs in an Oblivion or a Skyrim or a Morrowind, they were just interesting. And even though a Redguard and a High Elf may have the same voice actor, I just found the storytelling interesting and the NPCs talking to them. I don't know what it is about this, guys, but everything about this game feels absolutely lifeless. Up to the shipbuilding quick. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I didn't mind the shipbuilding, although I found the controls to be very clunky and you had to have just a certain way to get these things to attach. I didn't dive too deep into this. As I said, by the time I got around to playing this, I had a really bad injury on my thumb. As you guys can see, if you've been with the channel for a long time, I did cut my tendon right across there. So that was a very long time to get that healed and, you know, workable again. So a lot of the games I put in the back burner. I missed this. I missed Call of Duty. I didn't get time to play them. I just found the shipbuilding to be ho-hum. It was not really good. It was not really bad. Just mediocre. And you'll notice with my take on this game is the entire game is mediocre. Now, Todd does make a good point. He said if this game was not a Bethesda game, it probably would have been received better, and I do agree with him. But again, it circles around to the point of they don't know what the fans of their studio actually want, and that's the whole point of this. As for the gunplay, I found it a little bit clunky. I didn't find it like outrageously hard or anything like that. I found the weapons to be pretty boring and bland. There was nothing that really stood out. I didn't really care for a certain type of weapon. I used just a basic SMG. I don't even know what the hell it was called now. I can't remember. But again, the looting was just not interesting, guys. Any weapons that were better than the one you had before were just almost felt like it was really boring and diluted. Sometimes you get the same way when you're playing like a Borderlands or something. You're not even paying attention to what the weapon is. It's just the stats. And when you get to that point, it's like, I don't know. I like to go slow and fiddle with stuff in these big open world type games, and this didn't really scratch my itch for that aspect at all. As for the main story, guys, as I told you before, I did not complete this game. I didn't finish it. I don't care about it. It's done. I will probably go back and putter with it a bit and do some of these fetch quests and side missions. But as for the main story, I have no ambitions to beat this game. It's really a shame, you know, Bethesda is one of my favorite game studios, but they've really dropped the ball in this one. But 76, in my opinion, while it has its issues, it's still a decent game for what it is, and I totally get why they did that and where they were going with it. I don't really have a problem with that one. The future of this game, I don't think it's going to be anything to write home about. I don't think they're going to support it too much, honestly. I believe they did it. They wanted to do it. They're done with it. Don't think it's worthwhile for them to pour a bunch of resources into it anymore. They might come out with some odd DLC and stuff like they're doing for 76. But other than that, I think you're going to see this game kind of just fade away into obscurity. I don't think there's a lot of diehard fans that really want to play this. But looking at this long-term for Bethesda, they really didn't learn any lessons from this, and you can tell by the articles that have come out. You know, you have Emil, the main writer here. He thinks this game was underrated and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, dude, the stories are absolutely trash in this. And if you have that same sort of attitude going into the next game, you know, Elder Scrolls, the stories and stuff are really going to lack, guys, and it's really a shame. You know, the thing is with Todd and Emil and Bruce, they've all been doing this stuff for so long. You get into this comfort zone of, hey, our games are successful, you know, we can kind of do no wrong, everyone's going to buy them no matter what. And that's a really shitty attitude to have. And you can really see it with Todd lately. It's kind of like he's got this God complex or something about this. It's really stupid. Again, this is not going to be a super long video, guys. I'm not feeling very good today. I just kind of want to go over this and give you guys my thoughts on how Starfield was. Now, I know I'm late to the party. It's 2 years down the road, but I finally did get a chance to play it. And again, I would say this is just a very mediocre space shooter. If anything, I would describe it as a very poor man's Mass Effect game with poor game mechanics and terrible writing. That's my thoughts on this game. If you are on Game Pass and you want to just horse around with it, yeah, by all means, it's free, right? You might as well get your money out of it. And some people might like it. That's just my opinion from a guy that's played basically every Bethesda game, and it definitely didn't meet my expectations. On that note, thank you guys for sticking around. I really appreciate it. If you have any comments, let me know below. As always, like and subscribe. I appreciate it, guys. We can chat about this a little bit more, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.